Well, you probably have guessed that exhibits may change a little bit going forward, but you may not really know how or what to expect or how to be prepared. But we have the perfect expert here to guide you with what may or may not be changing with booths going forward. So I want to introduce and then quickly turn it over to him for his presentation. Mel White is the VP of Marketing and Business Development at Classic Exhibits, a Portland, Oregon-based builder of exhibits and environments with over 200 North American distributors. Since 2005, he has co-developed over a dozen product lines such as Gravity, Symphony, and Magellan. He currently serves on the Exhibitor Appointed Contractor Association Advisory Board, that's a mouthful, as the exhibit producer representative, and was on the board of directors for E2MA, an industry advocacy group. Mel has written more than 700 blog posts about trade show marketing, and he is the author of What's So Funny About Trade Shows? A Humorous Guide to Effective Trade Show Marketing. So Mel, thank you so much for being here, and thank you to Classic for being one of our sponsors. So I want to make sure everybody knows if they don't get enough information in this fast 20 minutes, they can come meet with you in your virtual booth later this afternoon and ask all the questions they want. So I am going to bring up your slides. And I'm going to take myself off camera and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for attending, and my sincere appreciation to Marlis for asking me and Classic Exhibits to present at Sparks. So the past 16 months has forced us all to rethink and reimagine face-to-face. While the past matters, the future matters even more. When it comes to trade shows and live events, we're all asking ourselves, are post-pandemic design trends going to be radically different? And the answer is, perhaps. So let's take a fun journey about predicting where we think it's going to go and then give you some early indicators of where it actually is. All right? Today we're going to put on our pointy caps, look into our crystal ball, and make a few predictions about exhibit design trends. Specifically, we'll discuss what we thought was going to happen and then review what we're seeing at Classic Exhibits from over 200 distributors in North America. And will the early trends this spring be the same this fall? First, our predictions. In June 2020, Classic and Court Rental Furniture hosted a webinar about post-pandemic designs for trade shows and exhibits. At the time, we were all still learning about COVID, how it spread, how long the virus lasted on surfaces, and ways to minimize our personal exposure. I'm sure you all remember that painfully. That said, we were pretty confident about these 5 trends that would continue once trade shows resumed. Number 1, acrylic safety partitions. This seemed unavoidable, not only in the trade show hall, but in lounges and registration, but also in the booth space for both inlines and islands. We fully expected these sneeze guards to be everywhere. Safety, safety, safety. Of course, number 2, hand sanitizers. That, whether it's an actual stand or it's actually the squirt bottle in the booth, we thought those would continue going forward. One-way traffic. We've all experienced it at supermarkets. When it comes to trade shows, we didn't expect this to be a long-term change, but we were pretty sure this would be a requirement for a few years. No-touch demo stations. To eliminate the need for constant sanitizing, exhibitors would be looking for no-touch options like videos, QR codes, and touchless monitors, even holographic presentations. And finally, conference rooms and meeting spaces. No way. We all asked ourselves, would anyone want to be in an enclosed space with strangers anytime soon? And the answer was probably not. So as a manufacturer of displays, we also had to consider what exhibitors would need and or buy. And using our tarot cards and past experience, like previous economic downturns, we anticipated the following. The first one wasn't easy. Okay, messaging campaigns, heck, even logos would change over 16 months. everyone would need updated graphics. We were also sure that exhibitors would make small structural changes to their display properties. Not big ones, but small ones. Rentals. Think uncertainty in budgets, show attendance, even timing. Those all favor rentals, and we fully expected exhibitors to downsize and not invest in major exhibit properties. Rental inlines would allow them to test the waters, participate, and look good. Portables. If the past has taught us anything, it's that portable sales increased during and just after any economic disruption. Okay, that's another easy one, or so we thought. Hint, hint. Modular solutions. Just like rentals, modular solutions offer exhibitors flexibility and the ability to shift from a 10 by 10 to a 10 by 20 to an island using many of the same components and graphics. And exhibitors would want that modularity as they were looking at where they were going over the next few shows. And the last one, light boxes. To be honest, this was a no-brainer. LED light boxes were huge before the pandemic, and we saw no reason that trend wouldn't continue post-pandemic. All right, so far, May and June. Predictions are predictions, but what are we actually seeing? Let me share our observations with two important qualifiers. Starting in May, we've seen a steady increase in quotes and orders. In other words, 2 months. Second, what are we seeing? We're seeing the orders we're seeing are coming from the planners who are exploring their options for fall and winter shows. We know that planners are a much smaller subset than the procrastinators. In the end, the procrastinators may have the same or similar request, but we don't know, and delaying doesn't work in their favor or ours. So some early surprises. First one, conference rooms, meeting spaces, and lounges. Even in closed spaces. What's odd is that some are making adjustments in the room size or even using double decks to separate people or really off-site rooms, but there's been little hesitation, and I know this is kind of surprised us, is that there's been little hesitation about sitting around a table with other people. People are more than happy to have meeting rooms in their booth, even to have enclosed meeting rooms within their booth that are at kind of the standard height. So very shocking. 2, partitions. We thought, and we did a lot of designs early on where we showed partitions in booth and showed partitions separating people within island so they could comfortably do demos and be 6 feet apart from other people. But there's been almost no request. In fact, I would say at this point, there's been 0 requests. Now, that doesn't mean that exhibitors aren't concerned about safety, but they're much more willing to adjust the booth design, in other words, have that booth be less crowded for a more open plan than they are to adding partitions or adding barriers. Traffic flow. Well, as I said before, we're all comfortable and we've all seen, to some extent, one-way traffic lines in the supermarket. Now, whether people follow them or not is one thing, and I think we've largely seen that people kind of ignore them. Well, exhibitors are kind of feeling the same thing. They're making minor adjustments, particularly in islands, and at least a tentative plan to limit the number of people in the booth, both attendees and staffers. However, we haven't seen any designs with rigid traffic maps. In other words, they're trying to be careful, but they're not controlling the traffic flow, that you can only enter on this side of the booth and only exit on this side of the booth. It doesn't seem to be a major concern. And if you think back about a year ago, we would have all said that, yes, there would be a clear traffic pattern in the booth itself. Now, what's happening at the shows, as with shows move forward with wider aisles for the show space itself, that is happening. And some shows are having one-way aisles within the booth, but we aren't seeing that trend within the booth spaces themselves. All right, what about post-pandemic design trends? And a few minutes ago, we talked about portables and modular displays, light boxes, rentals, and other items. So how many of these did we get right? Here's our psychic predictions. Well, the first one, I think you'll be proud of us on this one, graphic updates. Now, that was a pretty easy one. After, 16 months, 18 months, people, are going to have to update their graphics. 2, hand sanitizers. Everyone is asking for hand sanitizer, where the stand or they're putting it in the booth. That's not going away, and we don't think that's going away for a couple years. Or the sense of comfort and a sense of not risking anything by having hand sanitizer, at least having it in the booth. Light boxes, yes. Just like before the pandemic, lots and lots of light boxes, so we got that one on the nose. And the last one, rentals. Well, we kind of got that one right, but not in the way that you would think. So let's kind of explore that a little bit more. As we said before, we thought there would be a huge surge on rental inlines. It's a safe bet. It's an inexpensive option. People can customize it, but people would test the waters by first going into inlines. The reality is that we're seeing rental islands on a 4-to-1 versus inlines. And it's important to remember that these islands, and part of that reason, and I'm going to get to that in just a second, is that we suspect that at many shows, in fact, going forward, that there will be a 50-50 mix of rentals and purchase displays, and that's a trend that we don't see changing anytime soon. Second, large custom islands. This has been a shock, but perhaps it shouldn't have been. Not all industries and or companies were affected equally during the pandemic. Some have done well, and we've gotten considerable number of larger traditional custom island designs with wood, even with the price of wood going up, in the 20 by 30, 20 by 40, 30 by 50 range, some pricing at as high as $500,000. Sustainable exhibits. At Classic Exhibits, we've been designing and building eco-friendly exhibits through our ecosystems line since 2007. So we're old hands at it, literally thousands of exhibits over the years. We expected green displays to rebound, but we didn't expect it to rebound this quickly. Honestly, it's refreshing to see so many requests for displays built with sustainable materials. Modular. Again, we expected modular. People would want that flexibility. We didn't expect mostly custom modular design requests, people wanting to really customize those items. These are primarily built from Gravity, which is one of our modular wall systems. That's a basic structure, and they're being extensively modified from pre-existing kits or simply starting from a ground-up design. So just like custom, that people are willing to spend the money we're seeing to make that happen. Portables. Now, we did predict portables. Remember, we talked about that before. But what we didn't predict is that portables would be kind of upscale or high-end portable. We're seeing a steady flow of orders for more upscale portables with modularity and accessories. Think elegant portables, which with iPad stands, with monitors, with literature racks, with a whole variety of monitors and other things, but all those still pack in a rotomolded case. But these don't look portable and offer considerably more design options and modular flexibility. So that was a quick overview of what we're seeing as far as design trends out there, what we predicted, and what actually came through from Classic Exhibits. Here's my contact information. I welcome answering any of your questions in the lounge here in about 15 minutes. Marlis, is there anything else that you would like me to cover?
Wow, that was a lot in 15 minutes, Mel.
It was a lot, and if I went too fast, I'm sorry. So I encourage people to visit me in the lounge.
Yeah, because there's so much in the expo hall, actually. So just make sure people land in the right place. Mel will be in his virtual booth in the Spark Expo Hall over in the AirMeet platform. But yeah, it is surprising to hear what some of those trends there that you weren't too far off, but yet they're kind of going in a different direction. I think that probably the graphics, like you said, that's the biggest no-brainer and probably the easiest way for somebody to update their booth going forward. I also liked how you shared about the that they're like opening up their space, because that's one thing I tell exhibitors all the time. It's like, you're putting too much in that 10 by 20 or 10 by 10. Let's open it up, or even an island, open it up and have more space for the people. So I think that's never a bad idea. I'm looking here. I don't see any questions. If you have questions for Mel, go ahead and type those in. And oh, yes. And I want to share the secret code for this session. You probably heard it a lot as Mel was talking, is rental. So that is your secret code to jot down for the Spark Challenge. So make sure you do that. And Mel will have a separate code for you if you go and visit his virtual booth in the Spark Expo Hall. But so Mel, one thing I want to go back to is the planners versus procrastinators, because you said that obviously the planners are a smaller portion, but the procrastinators, and I know things are starting to really get slammed and backed up for this fall. And so, what is your best advice? And I know we can't force anybody to not be a procrastinator, but what is your best advice for people going forward as they've got shows coming up, say September or October? What do they need to be doing right now to start getting ready? Maybe they're not ready to, to make that final decision and sign that check for the booth, but what do they need to be thinking about now as they move forward towards that time frame?
Well, hopefully if they have the information that they need from the actual show, and that's been a little bit slow to roll out for many of the shows that are out there, and people have delayed as a result because they don't have the show book, or they don't have all the final details that they need. But I would encourage them to reach out to their exhibit professionals, to the people that they've worked with in the past, and at least lay the groundwork for what they're thinking. I mean, it could be as simple as we're looking at using our existing booth that we have that's in storage, but not doing it the same size. Can we downsize it some into an inline, or we need a brand new booth? We don't really want to use our custom booth. What are our options for rental? Get that conversation started. Because the reality is, we all know that the show organizers are packing shows into this fall, going into the winter, and there's a lot of overlapping shows that are out there, and many overlapping shows for some exhibitors that can't realistically have the booth at one show and ship it to the next show in time. So they're going to they're either going to have to buy another one or rent another exhibit at the same time. The one thing that I would encourage people, other than simply starting that conversation, is consider, ask them what their capacity is, because we're all expecting, given the downturn, we all know that our industry was hit extraordinarily hard during the pandemic, and there are capacity issues. People don't have the same people on staff that they had before, and if they're procrastinating, if they're waiting until the last moment to make that decision, the worst possible outcome for them is their supplier will say, I don't have room on my schedule for you. I can't build it. I can't pull it. I can't ship it. I can't do anything. And then they're scrambling, or they're simply stuck after having made a commitment to the show that they don't have any viable property to take.
Yeah, well, and that's true, because, and then you've got supply chain issues too. I mean, that you can't expect things to just end up where you need them, when you need them, the way we used to. So you've got to allow for that. So if somebody does find themselves in a situation where, like you said, they've got two shows that suddenly, one was supposed to be in March and the other one's usually in October, and now all of a sudden they're back to back. What do they need to consider as far as timeline for rentals, or is that still going to be something that's going to be very much in flux as well?
I don't think rentals, and whether they're buying an exhibit or they're renting an exhibit, I don't know that the timelines vary that much. In your head, you may think, oh, it's going to be much easier. They're just pulling the property from what they have. But the reality is, it still has to do, there's still a design phase that goes through it. And the client, and you still have to order design and order graphics for it. If it's a typical kind of rental supplier out there, they're going to set the booth up. They're going to do all the things that they would normally do with the purchase, and they're going to customize it for you if they have those capabilities. So I wouldn't assume, if you have overlapping shows and you're going to choose a rental, that you can do that later than you would a purchase, because I think it's going to be about the same.
That's a really good tidbit of information, because like you said, I think most people probably assume it's like, oh, we can do a last minute rental if we have to, but they still need to plan ahead and have, and I would say, tell me if I'm wrong, but I would guess they need to have a plan A, B, and C, just so that they've got some options if you do get into a situation where you can't get something built, or you can't get the pieces that you need in order to do it in time, right?
Right. And, keep in mind, when you're building something, you're simply building it. When you're renting it, you're largely taking it from a pre-existing inventory of structures that are out there. And when that inventory is gone, then your supplier has to determine if they're going to add to the inventory or they're not going to make an investment. They have to make a decision about an investment. So even on a rental, there could be a limited quantity of panels or counters or monitors even, or whatever that's available, and when it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah, so if everybody's wanting to rent that same style of 20 by 20 island, get your order in early. Well, Mel, any final thoughts of something? And I know, like I said, you've got a lot more tidbits and answers you can give to people in your virtual booth here in a few minutes, but any last thoughts you want to share with people?
Marla, as well as I do, is everybody in the industry wants to do the right thing now. We want to be able to help people get back to trade shows, and we're encouraging them to reach out to us and make those plans. Don't be a procrastinator, because that may not work for you in the long run. And I think that's probably the best advice. Is we all want to be successful, and making those decisions now rather than later will ensure that they are successful. And one last thing, they don't have to spend a lot of money as they go back into the show. They can scale back if they want. But make sure that they planned it well and that their objectives are clear, as always.
Yeah, and I like too, is like talking with your exhibit design partner, and because you've shared some wonderful insights with us here today, and as they work with the company that they're used to working with, or they find a new one, you guys on the inside are going to be able to advise them in ways that they probably wouldn't think of themselves. So, Mel, thank you so much for being here. And thanks to Classic for being one of our sponsors for Spark. And everybody can just hop over to the AirMeet platform here in just a few minutes and sit down and have a more in-depth conversation with Mel in his virtual booth. So,
thank you, Marlis, and thank you all those who attended today. And I look forward to speaking with you in a few minutes.
All right. Sounds good. We'll see you all over in the AirMeet platform in just a few minutes.